All right, I'd like to welcome everybody out to our planning commission meeting for February 26, 2025. We have 5 commissioners present and Commissioner Warner joining us online, so 6 total. And I've asked Commissioner Adams to give our invocation.
All right, Father, we thank you to be here tonight, the commission here to help decide to help do the right things for our city and help everything go smoothly with us and everybody to be able to say what they need to do. And we say this in the name of Jesus Christ.
Amen. Thank you. All right, first item is our consent agenda. This is from our previous meeting of January 22nd, 2025. Was there any discussion on the minutes from our previous meeting?
It was so long ago, I don't remember.
Couldn't find any errors in what was there though.
All motion.
Okay, I have a motion. Second. Really all in favor? We do have to do this roll call. Commissioner Warner?
Yes.
Commissioner Adams?
Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
Commissioner Frisbee, yes. Commissioner Beecher?
Yes.
Commissioner Becker?
Yes.
Okay. Consent agenda approved. The next item is our public forum. This is for any items that are not on the agenda. If you're here for an agenda item, we'll get to those here in a minute. There's agendas in the back pockets here. But if you'd like to address us about something not on the agenda, you're welcome to step up to the microphone and share your thoughts with us. Okay, seeing no items for the public forum, we'll move on to item 5. Item 5.1 is a review decision on the subdivision plat amendment for Blackhawk Business Park with a lot of parcel numbers. And as Michael, you have our presentation on that, or?
That's my plan. Looks like it's showing something I didn't want to show. There we go. So hopefully you can tell where we're talking about with this property. On the north there, the road, this is the 800 South, and it's skipping on me. So 800 South there, the business that's, I can see my cursor. The business, you can see the little red dot on there. Those are the professional condominium units there. And then the business just to the right of that is the Jimmy John's. So we've seen this already, but it was for the mixed use overlay designation. But this property also has some condominium units that have not been built that are identified on the county parcel map. So let me show you that. So on the left-hand side, you can see in red, those are the condominiums units that have been identified. However, they have not been built. And the applicant owns all of these units as well as that backwards Utah-shaped parcel. And so their proposal is to join those with that backwards Utah-shaped parcel to create one parcel. Since the Jimmy John's parcel up above actually is a separated piece now, even though it doesn't reflect it in the county parcel map yet. But so regardless, the applicant would like to join those red parcels on the left-hand side with what's on the right in blue. So this is now turned 90 degrees, but you can see in the hatched area are on the top of that hatched area, that's the Jimmy John's portion. And at the bottom of that are the existing condominium units that are built. And so their plan would be to create a single parcel on this large piece to do their development for a mixed use residential and commercial development there. The way this works is, since there are no easements or roads or anything of that nature being vacated, the planning commission is the land use authority for vacating or amending a subdivision plat. And so that's why we brought it to you today. Any questions on this?
You're saying, your access for now, are they using the same access as what was originally planned?
Yes.
So that'll be the roads going into the development.
Yes, and I believe the, on the east side or at the top of that hatch mark where Jimmy John's is, that's a right in, right out.
At the driveway there, yes.
Yeah, so that is also usable by this development.
So you talked like it was gonna be separated into different units. I mean, Jimmy John's was a separate.
So yes, Jimmy John's is its own parcel that's now not affiliated with this area in blue. So
So you're gonna have an access to Jimmy John's property?
yes, it would have an easement to go through, but the primary access would be in that area in between the condo units and the blue area that's that reversed Utah shape right there that doesn't have any color, just has the aerial map. That would be the area that would be the primary access.
So you're still kind of limited the access to it there.
Yes, and that's intentional largely because 8 South is a UDOT road and they limit how many access could be on there.
So how many more units are gonna be in there?
So the development will have, I believe, 48 residential units and up to 12 commercial office space type units.
And that's already approved by the city council.
Correct. This is just to
This is
amend
a-
this.
This is a paperwork
plat.
shuffle, is all this is.
Yes,
So I still want to.
Yeah, that's all it is.
Where he's telling us that we've got Jimmy John's, that's their property there. I mean,
Well, it was
It's-
these people property.
Yeah.
When they sold it to Jimmy John's,
Yeah.
they reserved an easement through it.
but they do that, so that's why I was getting at
Yes.
this, so they.
so they still have a shared access easement through there.
That's why,
Yes.
Jimmy John's is just leasing it, the same owner owns everything.
Oh, okay. So scratch that, same owner owns it all. I thought there was a change there, but
okay, that's where it was a separate entity, that's why I was, had a little up, you know, what's going on with that, because you guys, they get upset, these guys come through here all the time, go through the drive-through and all that all the time, so.
and just to identify the gentleman that spoke, that's Wes Zufelt. He is representing the owners of the development on this project, so.
The side beside Jimmy John's is planned to be exit only, so there'll only be one entrance and then 2 exit options.
That driveway's about in and out on it right
Yeah,
now.
it's not really wide enough to make it both directions.
Well, I know, but I'm just, when I've gone in there, I've seen arrows going both directions, that's why I was
But it-
concerned about it.
We'll repaint it and put signage in there to make it exit only.
Wes, from what I understand, it'll be right only, correct?
Correct.
So people wouldn't even be able to exit and turn left onto 800 South right
Both
there.
of them will be that way, and we'll put a concrete thing in to make it so it's right on.
Other questions?
So I have a question, just what is the recommendation of the staff and Payson were being presented?
Staff recommends approval for this. The property owner owns all of these undeveloped condominium units anyway. And they've got their other approvals for development. They are very near site plan approval for this. So we feel as if it's appropriate. The applicant has also done a traffic study at the city council's request, identifying their capacities and their impact, as well as what it would use this, these access to the roadway.
Is it gonna be 2 levels or? Is it gonna
It'd be 2-story. Okay, so we would need a motion. It's not a recommendation, it's a motion for approval or denial on this.
That's not a public hearing either, right?
Correct.
Okay.
I move that we approve the request for a plat amendment to consolidate lots 3AB, 4AB, 5AB, 6AB for the Blackhawk Business Park condominiums Phase 1 plat. And we find that it meets all the requirements of Payson City Code, and it has no detrimental impacts or effects to the plat if consolidated.
Second.
A motion, I have a second, and the roll call, start Commissioner Becker.
Yes.
Okay, Commissioner Beecher.
Yes.
Commissioner Koff.
Yes.
Commissioner Frisbee, yes. Commissioner Hamilton.
Yes.
Commissioner Adams.
Yes.
And then Commissioner Warner.
yes,
Okay, that will get consolidated and recorded appropriately. And then, do you have any more comments before we go on to 5.2?
Sorry?
Did you have any other comments before we go to 5.2?
No?
Okay, moving on to item 5.2. This is review and decision on the West Mountain Field House, request by applicant Ariel Martinez for conditional use permit. Put a field house on the property located at 594 South, 2400 West in the A5H annexation holding zone.
So, a little bit of detail on this. In the A5 zone, field houses are a conditional use. And the A5H zone is essentially the A5 zone, but it was annexed into the city as an annexation holding zone with the intent that some future plan, some future zone, or something to that effect would happen at some future date. So what staff is recommending here is, well, I'll get to it in detail, but essentially what it is city council can approve the A5H designation to be removed upon a specific plan generated for a development proposal being done, or the zoning being changed. And so that will be one thing that we'll talk about a little bit later. But to orient you, I've got this, I did have this Google map. So as you can see, this is kind of a big, huge view of the city. Let me have it kind of zoom in for you. So as you can see, it's there on the west side of the railroad tracks. And then it's on that, or we like this reverse Utah thing, but it's this kind of reverse Utah shaped parcel. That's a field now. The piece where my cursor is here is part of the property as well, but the intent of the applicant would be to build the field house on the more of the southern portion of that. Let me continue to give you some more information. So this is the parcel map of what the parcel looks like. You can see the 2400 west on the east side of the property there. So this is just a basic landscape and parking layout that's being proposed. So you can see that somewhat in relation to the area. Interior, this is what the field house would look like on the interior. You can see the courts and the batting cages and whatnot. Staff has some recommended conditions of approval. Otherwise, it won't be legal anyway because it's in that A5H zone. So those are the following. They need to get a development proposal adoption from the city council to remove it from the annexation holding zone and just place it in the A5 zone. And then the other thing is, in our city code, we don't identify field houses for the number of parking stalls that are required. The closest thing we have is a rec center, and that's not quite the same thing. I was doing some research on how many parking stalls are typically necessary for a field house, and they're typically in the range of 2 stalls per 1,000 square feet or 3 stalls per 1,000 square feet of building area. And so our code allows for any uses that are not mentioned in the parking, off-street parking requirements. They can do an independent parking study by a traffic engineer, and that can be accepted by our city engineer if they agree with that. So those are the 2 primary things that staff would recommend as conditions of approval on this. The third one would just be that he goes through the site plan and building permit process for development of this site. Questions on that before I continue?
Where you talk about the re-annexation, rezoning, now what are you talking about on that? I will clarify that for you.
So that area that's there in just below the first bolded section, it says the A5H zone classification. That's language directly out of our city code, and it lists 3 ways in which property can be designated differently from the A5H. And one of them is what we're recommending is a development proposal approval. And that's a city council thing. And so any decision here would be conditioned upon them getting that approval from council, which we are anticipating at the next council meeting in March.
Okay, so now where they're already annexed into Spring Creek, and that's already set up in the master plan as high density. So now, how does this fall into that? I'm looking at the master plan. I mean,
So yes, that master plan, it has, I believe, somewhere in the realm of about 8 housing units to the acre is anticipated in that area. That doesn't mean that we can't potentially do something a little different. I think the intent of the plan would be that we follow that to the extent that we can, but there's no reason why we can't have something like this in that vicinity. It would still be something that would be permissible. We would just leave it A5 zoning if that was what this body chose to do with a conditional use permit.
okay, another thing is that it said where you put the commercial stuff would be going on 8 South and 2900 West and 8 South. Now this is still kind of confusing.
So the way the plan lays that out, it's not 8 South, it's more like 690, which is closer to where this property is. This property, and we would work with the applicant on this, but potentially we would need to get some right of way if that is where the road actually goes to, once it crosses over the railroad tracks and then comes into this area, we would need to get some right of way for that. Part of it could be dedicated by the applicant with site approval, but the impact to the applicant is less than what the need of the road is. So the city or whoever else would have an intent on this, perhaps UDOT, if they were to secure that access, would need to pay for the remaining portion that's not a direct impact to the applicant.
On that road. Now, right now, that road, you go out one way in and one way out. It's barely wide enough to get 2 cars down.
Correct.
We get our farm equipment running down there, that's gonna be chaos.
Yes, and something of the nature of this use, I don't anticipate being a significant impact, but various homes and housing as the plan identifies, yes, the road would definitely need to be widened. There need to be other means to access that sort of thing.
And your parking space, the way that plan shows is parking on the west side. I did a walkabout today and I walked by and I seen where the building was staked out. And if you really park a car right there, you're just not gonna be in the road.
Are you talking on this?
Beyond the west, that'd be.
The east side?
This is the
east side, that'd be the east
This
side.
would be
of
the east side,
excuse me. But anyway, it's showing on the west here, but it'd be on the east side and it'll just about put you right out in the road.
right,
So
and
that's what might be concerned.
upon our site plan review process, we would ensure that there's adequate distance away from that and that he would meet any city requirements for setbacks based off of what that intended width of the road is. I believe that road would be a collector road. And so it would be based off of that distance from the road. So this is just conceptually on his proposal plan. He hasn't done the site plan drawings and civil engineering.
Like I said, I see the stakes laid out in your.
So the stakes that we put there, just
Ariel.
to kind of see the size, but
Yes.
just same time.
Come on up here so we can hear you better.
Oh. So we have still close to 90 feet on the back of the house where we can actually move the whole building to. in the back.
Further back.
You're
So-
talking on 90 feet from the house.
Just give us your
On
name.
the south side.
Just give us your name too for the record there.
Oh, sorry. My name is Ariel Martinez.
Thank you.
So we just went out, just me and him, just kind of staked the size of the building. But yeah, so code said 25 feet from the road, but we're just staking it out, just, I guess, for
Like
fun.
I said, I went for a walk about,
Yeah.
I've seen it, and I'm going. there's
Yeah,
that building
But behind the building, we still have close to 85 feet where we
on the
could,
south side.
yes, where we could move the building all the way to the back, where we could fit most of the parking in the front. And obviously, with the parking right now, we're just still trying to decide as far as parking, what the city is gonna require us to do. So, but there's plenty of space where we can move everything back and have all the parking in the front, or if we do need to do it to the side where there's entrance there.
My concern is if they park on that east side of the building, they're gonna be backing down that road, they're gonna get hit.
So-
A lot of people.
No,
I
that,
know you gotta do your traffic
that would
study
be,
for
that would be landscaped and curbed, so they wouldn't be able to do that except for if there's an entrance onto that road.
Like I said, I just wait, it's showing right here, it's not
Yeah.
showing anything, but that's why I've got concern about it.
No, and I understand. Like I said, we just kind of drew this up, just kind of give them an idea of the size and everything. But like I said, on the back of that, the property, we still have 80+ feet where we can move everything on the west side. Correct, and it still gives I think it's 25, 30 feet away from the other property as well that we require. So parking is obviously depending on what what the city decides as far as how many stalls we're gonna be required to do, so. And just so you have an idea, there's gonna be 2 fields. Each field usually has a 6v6, right? With coaches and your sub players, there's probably per team is gonna be 10. So with 2 fields, you're looking at 40 people, right? So it's 40 people that would be coming in. If you know, the height, you're looking at 40 people turnover rate.
Players, right?
I'm sorry,
Players, right?
players, correct. But I mean, that's-
So-
No, yeah,
So you can have more.
well, and that's what I was, just with players alone, you're looking at 40, but we were estimating around kind of the calculations when we went online and talked to some of the people that actually do the parking and stuff like that. They were estimating about 75 parking, and that's with the turnover about an hour, half an hour between each games, or each games, counting people who are lingering, counting people who, stay for an extra game, stuff like that, so. I don't know if there's any question.
Other questions?
Can you hear me?
Go ahead, Blair.
But this is for Michael. You talked
Go ahead,
about,
Blair.
can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. This is for Michael. You talked about taking this out of the A5H zone and putting it in the A5 zone. My recollection is that the area plan does not call for any A5 zoning in that area. Why wouldn't we take it right into the zone that we eventually planned it to be?
That could potentially happen. We just felt as if this use, one, is something that's permitted in the A5 zone, conditionally permitted. And 2, the impact of it is less intense than, say, a medium density residential zone. So our thoughts are we leave it the A5 zoning, and then let development come to the area. And then development would dictate when we need to zone differently in the area.
Okay, but that does create for us a spot zone effectively with that A5. And what is it that's going to trigger that change of the zone in the future? If this property is all developed with this facility, what is there to trigger a zone change for it later down the road?
I think that would just trigger based off of if there's other development, or if Ariel and his team or future owners perhaps want to do something different or something more intense. That would be what triggers that. As far as your statement about spot zoning, that's not really a thing anymore, at least in the state of Utah. they've changed that in the state code. So they've given that power to the cities to determine what they feel is most appropriate for each area, and the language about spot zoning has been removed. So you can have small parcels that are zoned one way surrounded by other parcels, and that's not illegal. So, and like I said, the existing property surrounding would still be very similar in nature with the uses that are going on there. Did
Thanks.
that answer your question, Blair?
It does. It leaves me with a little bit of question, I guess, down the road. How the impact of this parcel as an A5 would impact the surrounding parcels at development. I don't know whether we want to put some language into a development agreement or not that would make it so we wind up with what the plan calls for down the road.
I mean, that could potentially be a condition of approval, provided you have statements and or connecting reasons as to why you would want that, and what the intent is you want to see. And I think realizing the intent of the specific area plan is a good intent. So that could be a possibility. One more comment just back to the Planning Commission in general. I noticed that there is some desire to comment from the public. This is not a public hearing. However, you are welcome to take comment or questions from them if you'd like.
Should I just stay here in case?
Was that the rest of your presentation, or is there any additional?
So here, this is the general review criteria for all conditional uses. This is what you would need to base any conditions on, is this criteria. So I'm not going to go through each one of these. They're pretty generic, but ultimately, any condition you impose on a use needs to be reasonable, and it needs to relate to the thing that you're trying to mitigate. It can't be something willy-nilly that's, we want, pink flamingos out front, for example.
But we want them.
Create that nexus, and then you can have them. So just going back again, so staff does recommend approval of this conditional use, conditioned upon these 4 bullet points. The one I mentioned was that the applicant receive that development proposal adoption from City Council to change the A5H designation to just the A5. And then also that the applicant complete that parking study by a traffic engineer and submit that to the staff. Do the site plan and building permit processes as we require on all development. And then if there's any reasonable conditions that you as Planning Commission would like to impose upon the development.
So I do know in relation to parking, you said we're looking about 45,000 square feet. You're saying either 2 or 3,000 or 2 or 3 stalls per thousand, depending on what you've seen. Shooter's Field House, I think they probably have 60 or 70 stalls on a single field.
Shooters?
Shooters, and it's not enough parking. So
I could double check that, because I actually think it's a lot
yeah.
less than that, but
Yeah.
Same thing with the one in Spanish Fork. I know the Spanish Fork has a big issue.
Yeah, I
For sure.
Those guys for a while.
Yes,
It's not-
so I know that one's for sure a really big issue. I think Spanish Fork, after they paved, is a lot better, but yeah, I understand.
Yeah, anyway,
So-
so I would definitely lean towards the 3 stalls per thousand. It's about 135 stalls, but just having spent time at the Shooter's Field House and stuff like that,
Yeah,
and they only have a single field, I know theirs is not adequate for the amount of people flowing in and out of there, so. But other than that, I don't have any huge problems with it, other than making sure there's enough parking, but people aren't parking out on the roads or whatever else, so. Is there any other questions from commissioners? Comments? We will entertain, if you'd like to make some public comment, go up to the microphone, share your thoughts with us. So. And then just give us your name, please.
My name is Christy Metz. I'm a huge soccer fan. I know Ariel, he played with my son. And I actually go to the Shooters soccer field thing quite often, and it is a parking issue. Getting in and out of there, the road's small. People have to wait for other people. Getting out onto the road in front of the Shooters is a big problem. People have to sit and wait for other people to pull in. It's a county road, people are going by. I really do feel like that road will not handle 40 kids coming out there to play with people watching them and all that goes on. It's not a big road, it's a small road. It's a danger, it's a hazard. Another problem I have is the septic tank. What are we gonna do? There can be a lot of people using the bathroom, and the septic tank is gonna have to be able to accommodate that. Then you've got the water, the well that they'll use. You're gonna have to pump a well. He can't use what goes to his house for that. What about fire suppression if there's a fire? There isn't a fire hydrant out there. So for fire suppression, I think that's an issue. I think that this is gonna come. I think it's a good thing. I just don't think that area is ready yet. I think it needs to wait until Payson City brings out sewer, water, fire hydrants, and until that road comes out to help with that traffic. Because there's no way traffic's gonna handle that. And I know you got your firefighter. What happens when there's a fire? You gotta wait for the pumper trucks to come out, and they have to bring their water. I just don't think Payson's ready for this. I don't wanna be Saratoga Springs. I don't wanna be Eagle Mountain that did not get ready for what they were putting in. And they ended up with a mess. My husband is a highway patrolman, had to go out there and answer calls. The roads were horrible to get to accidents, to take care of issues that were coming up. For the fire departments to get there, it was horrible. I would just like to see Payson plan things better, get slower, wait for your development to catch up with you. And instead of jumping and putting these things in, we're not ready for it. I know it's coming, I accept it, but I want to do it smart. I want it done smart so that I can get out of my driveway. I know that Salem Hills had a horrible time with kids getting out of the parking lot when school got out, and there's people who couldn't get out of their driveways, had to plan leaving their homes at certain times. I know this is going to be busy. I go to Salem Shooters. It can be really busy and really congested, and it's a problem. Just asking Payson, let's go slow. Let's figure it out. Let's not jump in it too fast. So I think that's what we're doing with this. And I understand Ariel's excitement. His kids are young now. Now's the time he wants to do it. But Payson's got to be smart. Let's be smarter than other cities. Let's not jump in too fast on these things.
Thank you. Anybody else have any other comments?
A lot of those sorry, go back.
Come back to Mike, please, just so it gets recorded properly,
Yeah.
please.
So. It's just a lot. So I understand a lot of those concerns too, but I think after talking to the city, we've met several times with the fire department as well, the chief and everything, and we touched bases on what needs to be, what's gonna be required if this gets approved to get that conditional approval done. So it's not something that we're just jumping in and not taking into consideration. I mean, that road that we're talking about, we're taking that into consideration. The power that we have to run out there, we're putting everything how it's supposed to be and not next to the road. So I understand the concerns. I actually grew up in this town as well. So I do have kids. This is for my kids, this is for the community, but we're not just jumping into it. We've talked to every department in the city. We've been doing this for, I want to say, close to a year now. So it's not, we've talked about, I guess, every scenario, right? With every department, and we're trying to do it the right way for sure. So hopefully that makes sense.
Those could be engineered. I mean, that's always proper engineering steps and stuff. I mean, Shooters has the water tank outlet. They've got the septic the right size. It just, as long as it's engineered properly, it can be done. So, and I'm sure you work with the city to try to.
Yeah, that's kind of where we're at. So
okay.
Appreciate it.
One thing I believe we shared with you the business plan that Ariel has. But one condition that you could impose on this would be hours of operation. And that could be helpful as well for time of day, time of use, that sort of a thing. And then also, just to clarify, I know Commissioner Frisbee, you mentioned about the 3 stalls per 1,000. We just want to make clear that this body wouldn't impose any kind of parking. It would be based off of an engineered study by a traffic engineer, and our city engineer would approve that. So, any other questions that you have for me?
I've seen somewhere that, I mean, we're pushing it through as an R5, but when the high density, there was something in there I was looking for, I've been looking for it the last 2 days. I found it once and I can't find it, so I've got it. But it was talking like, there wasn't supposed to be a field house, a recreation center type of business in there. And like I said, I've been trying to find it and I haven't found it. And I mean, that's what I think we're trying to push through where we still can. I mean, like you said, we need places for the kids to play. I mean, this is gonna be for people to come in and play, but they gotta pay to come in. I mean, recreational areas need to be for everybody. I mean, nothing, I mean, I like your leagues and stuff like that, but I mean, to me, this is a community, and this is what we're trying to make out there as a community. And so I think we need to look at it, like I said, I'm gonna still go back and see if I can find it in our 13th chapter. I know it's in there, that I think was the way, you know, like it was brought it up, you know, we talked about bringing all the commercial out on Second South and 2900 and 8 South, or 7060, whatever it is gonna be. But that's kind of where I like to see it, because we put one big thing in the middle of everybody, you know, you got all these houses and you put one big thing in the middle of it. That's what Payson has kind of done, and I'd like to see us stay away from that. I'd like to finally see us unify, because I'm seeing a lot of cities that are not unifying their areas.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm looking at the master plan here, and this is in low density residential.
I think it has a portion of it that would be in that medium density.
Well, I'm looking at the map.
It's right there.
And it's low density
Oh,
residential.
yes, the specific plan further identifies, and it has.
And
Yes.
this plan has it low density residential right next to agriculture
Yes,
in the general plan.
that is correct.
And so
I see yellow on mine, that's fine.
yellow is low density residential.
That's 4 homes per year.
And, well, this is less than that.
4. I'm just,
No.
I have
This
to look
is
back,
less,
I was looking
this
at
is
it.
less density than 4 homes per acre by a long ways.
The way when I looked at it, I had an old plan. I had one of the 3 that when we first started Spring Creek, and it had it set up as 4.
Yes, I think, Commissioner Adams, you're referring to the specific area plan that further
Yes,
defines.
Right, and I'm referring to the general
Kirk
plan.
is referring to the general plan.
But he's even said that this is not a residential unit.
Yes, I know.
So it's less dense than a residential unit.
Period is a time.
For short periods.
Short periods.
For periods, it's not open all 24/7.
No.
It's only open during business hours type thing, or in the evening or whatever. So it's not as much impact, except for traffic, than residential. It's a lot less than residential as far as for sewer and water use. There's no showers here. There's no landscaping to water, all of that. It's a lot less use than a residential unit. So,
Well, it's significantly less use than the medium density residential that would be part of the specific.
part of
plan.
this area.
Yes.
Yeah, a lot less.
Aesthetically, it's different, is that what you're trying to say? You're trying to say that it's aesthetically different if you're putting houses out there.
Yes, well,
Like all your
I'm just,
buildings.
when everybody starts building, the way the master plan shows them, you're gonna have all these houses around this 300 foot by 50 feet, by 37 feet high building sticking out in the middle of subdivision. That's my You're gonna see an
The Athlete Development Center in Spanish Fork, I don't know if you've been by that one, but,
There's one in E5 too,
Yeah.
the five.
and it's right in the middle of the residential area / commercial there, yeah.
No, I know, but that's one of my, I'd say that's one of my peeves. I mean, I wanna see, you know. we wanna-
Commissioner Adams, if and when the medium density residential comes to this area, likely they will be 2 and 3 story buildings as well. So they'd be similar in height, not quite as high as maybe this, but it's surrounding this on, I would say, the west, possibly some on the east, and the south would most likely be those 2 and 3 story townhome style developments, or some sort of condominium style units, that sort of thing, if and when that plan gets realized as it was developed.
Yeah, right now, we're all single level, just about all of us
Correct.
out there.
Any other questions? Commissioner Warner, do you have any other thoughts or input?
No, just curious, if we went in this I think you said it was medium density, does the conditional use, is that available in that zone?
I don't believe that a field house is permitted in a medium density zone, no.
Maybe we'll want to make that possible. I would still like to see us hold true to the planned zone, even if that means allowing a conditional use for that.
I guess my only concern about that is if we make it in any of those zones, that means anywhere in the city that it's zoned that way, then it becomes a conditional use possibility anywhere in the city with that zoning designation, which creates a lot of.
And just to clarify with you, a conditional use is not we can deny this use, it's a yes, but, meaning that yes, we must allow it, but we can impose some reasonable conditions. Now, if the applicant's not willing to meet those reasonable conditions, then you could deny it. I wouldn't recommend changing the zoning in this area to medium density until we're ready to actually develop it there. We already get calls, I would say, every day about changing zoning or doing this so that we can put this here and there, but we need to do it when the applicants and or developers are willing to bring the infrastructure there. So the intensity of this use, as Commissioner Beecher is saying, is much less intense than what the plan would say. If and when that medium density were to come to the area, we could zone this as medium density residential, and this would be grandfathered, and so it'd be allowed to stay there. But if they discontinue the use there, then they would have to conform to that new zoning designation that would be there. But I wouldn't recommend rezoning this area in this time to something of that intensity without the proper way for the city to facilitate that.
I think the other problem I have with the grandfathering is that usually in a grandfathered situation, you're limited on what kinds of improvements and changes you can make down the road. And so you could wind up with a facility that looks aged, but because of zoning restrictions, they couldn't upgrade it. So that's kind of the other side of that I see that I'm a little concerned about.
Blair, did you want a response to that, or is that just a statement?
That was just a statement. Thank you.
Okay. So Jill just reminded me to bring you back to, these are the criteria that we need to consider when we do conditions on a conditional use. And so any condition that you would want to impose, it should relate back to one of these. So just think about that for a moment. And kind of, you're welcome to discuss and talk it over on this. So.
I mean, I'm okay with it as long as we meet all the engineering requirements, which I think they're working with the city and stuff like that, engineering parking study. So I don't have any major concerns as long as they go through that proper process. And they do cover the issue with fire, they cover the issue with sewer, and I think that's all gonna be addressed prior to building. As long as they can do that and meet what the city's asking for, then I don't see an issue with it. I mean, it could end up being a great thing as that develops in that neighborhood out there, or, you know, at some point they may decide to turn it into housing or whatever down the road, but I don't see an issue at this point in time with moving forward as long as they meet those conditions. And then just the question on the removing the H, so that's not a rezone, it's just a development.
So that's a very interesting way that section of code is written. Typically, a zoning designation changes with a zone change. And that is one option in which property can be removed from the A5H, which it stands for annexation holding zone. And so there's three ways that can do that. One of them is that zone change. The other is a specific plan, like I stated earlier, where maybe somebody comes in with a master plan for a large area and they want to do XYZ on it, and it makes sense to then pull it out of that A5H. And then the other is this last one, which we are recommending, is a development proposal. And that's essentially what he's given us tonight, and essentially what council would vote on if this body were to make a decision tonight.
Okay.
Can I ask what the neighbors think of this? Well, you're,
Not yet.
Yeah.
I want it when I feel like we're ready out there for it. And I don't
what
want
about, what about your neighbor to the west?
I like Ariel, I like him, I like the economy,
Well,
and I like.
what about
soccer.
your neighbor to the west?
Yeah, I think he wants to keep the peace in the
Brett-
neighborhood. so-
Brett
Well,
is
that's
neighbor
what
right
he said.
there.
He's talking about-
Oh,
Yes,
man.
Hi, Teresa. Brett,
This
come on
is
up.
the fourth plan I've heard about, and it all changes every time I come here. And I don't understand how you people think you're gonna get traffic down that road. They blocked off the freeway the other day for a wreck, and I couldn't get out of my driveway for 3 hours. I mean, I don't know how you're gonna do it, and I'm not against.
Can we have you
it.
step up to the mic, sir, so we can get on just the recording for the public record? Thank you.
You Probably don't want to.
Yeah, we do.
Like it or not, we have to do it. So.
I live next door to Perry, and he probably doesn't want everybody to know that.
Give us your name, please, before you start there.
My name is Fred Barber, and I live right across the street from you, I think,
Yeah, he's
kind of kitty corner. And I love the idea. I think it's a great idea, but this is the third or fourth time I've come to a plan that I didn't know about. I came here because I don't get a city bill. Thank you for telling me, because the last 4 meetings I never even knew. And I go to a meeting and they got my house divided into 5 pieces, and I go, what is all this? It's changed 4 times. So if that's what we're gonna do out there, then let's keep it how we all didn't agree to do it. And now we're putting a field house there. You're not gonna be able to get the traffic there. I'll guarantee you. The people in that area, in our neighborhood, and all my neighbors are not even gonna be able to get out of your driveway at certain times of the day. I understand they're not there in the nighttime. I understand all that. What about the infrastructure? You don't have the water out there. Everybody's begging for water. You got no sewer, you got no power, and now that's all gonna come in. How long's it been since we've been annexed? I still can't get the pizza guy to deliver it to my house. God helps if I die, because the ambulance has missed me 3 times. So how long ago was that street supposed to be changed? Google my house, you can't even find me. So I just wanna bear in mind, I'm not here to stop you. I want them to do whatever for the kids, because I love them. But the fact of the matter is, I agree with a couple people I heard in here. We need to do this, especially Opie's wife. We need to do this slowly and with some thought to it before we destroy what used to be West Mountain. Because I've been here 20 years and I'm flabbergasted. I'm not bragging or anything else. I have businesses in every town around here. And when I built in Payson, it was a nightmare. And I can, not my house, a business I have here, but I can tell you, I have seen this thing just steamroll through at the expense of our children and grandchildren. And my kids don't even live here. I'm not worried about them. I'm worried about you guys. You start pumping that traffic in down there. If anybody hasn't tried to get on Utah Avenue from my West Street in the morning with all those trucks and semis, and I know they're businesses and they gotta do it. But we need to, as grown-ups, think about how to do this so we can handle all this traffic and all the infrastructure you're gonna need to put a field house out there. I don't understand. Did not the last plan show a road going through there between my house and the next one and you and me? And now, how are you gonna put a road there? I mean, the plan's changed. All I wanna see is something that I can rely on to give to my daughter when I die out there. Because I can't tell her what's happening. Now I know there's a field house going in, and I found out when, Monday? So that's all I care about. Everybody can be mad at me, they usually are, but the fact of the matter is, I think you need to develop that thing and develop it with the neighbors in mind. Because I sure wouldn't want to put a business out there with a bunch of people mad at every guy that drives by there. Because don't kid yourself with the 40 and 70 car deal. Parking stalls, you'll need triple that, because every business I own, that's the major concern with all the cities, is the traffic doesn't fit it and the parking doesn't work. So that's all I'm telling you. Thank you for letting me talk.
Yep, thank you. Additional commission discussion. So I think their concerns can be mitigated through engineering, and that just, as long as it gets engineered properly, I don't see.
I mean, like,
So
do you mind if I?
just a brief statement. The city's always between a rock and a hard place. And the reason why I say that is because we have to balance private property rights of everyone, but we also have to allow development to occur if it meets the requirements that we put in place. We can't change it midway. We can't create a new plan midway, but we can set conditions. And that's why something like this is a conditional use in an area like this. So the specific area plan for this area was only adopted, I believe it was December 23. So there may have been various iterations to that, but that has been adopted, and the city is looking to move that forward. But again, we have to balance private property rights with what individual property owners want to do on their property with what our plans say. So it's not to say that we don't intend to follow the plan, but it's that fine line we always have to face. So.
A couple more comments you want to make?
Just the last one. Yeah. I think like the sir just said, he just found out about it, but I don't want people to think that this hasn't been something that we've been working on. So it's been over a year, I think, that we've been starting this process. So it's not something that we just threw out, you know, and hey, next month we'll just come into the city. So I think that's the biggest thing as far as the concerns that everybody has. It is stuff that we've talked directly with each department, the power department, utility department, the fire department. I mean, we've been discussing back and forth. So it's not, I know that sometimes it feels like it's, oh, this is out of the blue. I just want you guys to realize we've been on this for, I think over a year now. So it's been back and forth, and we're to a point where we're like, okay, we're starting to figure things out. And I think that's why we came here now. So we're part of the community as well. We again, born and raised here in Payson, right? Kids are here. So I don't want to do anything that's gonna make the community worse, right? I'm actually trying to make it better. And that's my thought. It's not, again, so that's the only thing. We haven't just came out of the blue doing this. We've been working on this for over a year now. So hopefully that helps.
Just to follow that up, there are no public hearings for this. There are no public hearings that would mandate that we notify the public. So there is some, I guess, obligation by the public that if they're interested in city affairs, that they need to check regularly of what is going on within the city. there's only a handful of things that actually require public hearings. And that's probably why most residents haven't heard about this. So I don't want anybody to feel as if we're ramming this through or anything like that. It's just, those were not requirements, and that's why we weren't proceeding in that manner.
Thank you.
So what, on number 6 up there, for example, impacts on improvements to roads and streetscape. What could we impose? Because that seems to be some of the biggest issue.
So that's a better question to ask our city engineer. I don't see him here, but ultimately we can require the applicant to improve areas of roadways that is considered his impact.
And that would would probably only be in front of.
Typically, it would be in front of the property, yes. There has been a lot of interest in this area, so I would expect that we're going to have other development here within the next few years. So.
And according to the one map, what was that map that you had?
This
That's where the
area
main
plan.
road's going right to the south of, so it seems like it's a decent spot eventually, you know, of where kind of busy roads, bigger roads are gonna be.
Are you referring to that UDOT
The
preferred
area-
alternative?
The Spring Creek area plan, future land use.
Yeah, okay. So the UDOT preferred alternative that they identified is just slightly north of that 790, which is on that plan.
Right.
It's probably closer to Ariel's property. It'd be more like 690, but the UDOT doesn't have any property. They haven't acquired any right of ways or anything like that. So the road will go where the right of way can be secured.
Right.
But Michael, if I can provide some clarification, one requirement of the engineering staff is that if you look at shifting, is building north to accommodate that corridor.
Yes.
So yes, it's a correct statement that nothing has been secured as far as right of way, but we don't want to approve a development that would inhibit that road from being built in the future, going back to a lot of the comments that the neighbors are making, so. Anyway, but yeah, so those would be things we would check in the site plan process. And I was telling everybody else to come up and then I didn't. I'm sorry. Anyway.
We're gonna have to fire you, Jim.
But yes, sorry, but yes, just, those would be, I want to make a little bit of clarification. I've just been sitting and listening to the comments and I wanted to make some clarification on a couple of things. In order for the applicant to get approval of this request, he has to receive more than one approval. One is conditional use permit, and that's conditions you put on the use itself. So somebody coming in, they want to do a certain use on a property, you look at that use, that operation of the business, how that use would impact the neighborhood or the surrounding properties. And that's the conditional use permit. So that is, it requires the land use authority to approve or to review and approve and place conditions. That land use authority happens to be the planning commission. That's why we're here tonight. You make the decision on that. And we go back to this criteria and it's based on the use. So I know that Chairman Frisbee had made a comment earlier too about, well, if we're meeting all the engineering requirements, and that's the second approval that the applicant needs to make, and that's the site plan approval. And I know that Michael had mentioned that too, that there's also the site plan process. Well, the land use authority for the site plan process is staff.
Right.
And that's where we're looking at the technical issues. So as you are deliberating and you're having conversation to determine what the motion should be, let's just understand that from a site planning issue, when we're starting to look at placement of roads and utilities and all those technical issues that way with actually the improvement of the site, staff is going to review that as a site plan, and those will be conditions that we impose or we make sure the applicant addresses before or as construction commences. You are looking at as that use goes in, and in order for that use to operate there for tomorrow and 1 year from now and 5 years from now, how could that use impact existing development or proposed development? And those are the conditions we need to put on, as was suggested, like with hours of operation. You know, it's like, you know, if we know that there is existing residential in the area and that there's going to be more residential in the area, we may say we want those hours of operation to be X to Y. And I mean, you don't want 11 o'clock use of those facilities because that impacts the residential nature of the area. And so the conditional use will run with the land. And so, you know, it won't just be this owner, it'll be a future owner or with that use being there. So that's why it's really important to go back to this list of conditions and say, okay, this use, having those facilities, we don't want to have midnight basketball games because then that is bringing traffic into the neighborhood when people are sleeping. And so, you know, lighting, you know, if you're lighting a larger parking lot to support the parking, we want to make sure that it's hooded or shielded so it's not, there's no light pollution onto the adjacent properties. So hopefully that helps too of separating technical issues. Staff will take care of with site planning and the ordinances and the standards that are adopted. Now the use and how it relates to the neighborhood, what would those additional what would those impacts be that we need to impose additional conditions to make sure that there's not a negative impact on current and the anticipated uses adjacent, if that helps. Or maybe I complicated it more, but anyway.
Is anybody ready?
I guess what we need to do is just get all the neighbors to go in and improve 2400 west, right?
Just put it on the map.
I'm teasing everybody. I'm just joking. I know there are a bunch of you in the room.
Have somebody willing to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we forward it on with a positive recommendation.
So this is
a decision, not a recommendation.
This is a decision. We're making a
This is, we
decision
are
on
approving the conditional
on
use.
Well,
The
approving,
condition would be
fine.
that the city council changes
And
the,
if there's any conditions we want to
Yeah,
set.
that we're, right, fine, that we're making that decision in order to, based on the conditions that are set when they meet the criteria for the general review of conditions. I'd love to definitely make sure to note on the impacts to the roads and streetscape on number 6 is something that definitely, you said that someone's going to come in and look at it, that's traffic something.
So we would require the applicant to do a parking study for the use by a licensed traffic engineer.
Okay, licensed traffic engineer. Yeah, that would be one that I would definitely wholeheartedly, boldly.
That's the
mention.
engineering part of it though.
But that would be a condition that staff would want
That's part of the
imposed
engineering
because
conditions.
like I stated at the beginning, a field house is not a use identified in our parking standards.
Yeah.
And so that's why we would recommend that study.
Well, that's paramount, I think, is one of the conditions that definitely needs to be set in order to move this forward before letting them have this go forward.
Are there any other conditions you recommend on that?
Kirk seems to have one.
I would recommend several others myself. So if you wanted to, let me
Yes,
amend your
yes,
your
a
motion.
friendly amendment as
And
opposed to
then
an
see if you
unfriendly
agree
one.
with them.
Sure.
I would recommend
So
we,
did you second first?
what's that?
Did you second first?
I'll second it,
Okay.
but I need to amend it with some things. So, I would limit the hours of operation to reasonable hours. I'm not sure what that is. The problem I have is that we really need to set something, but I don't know what that is.
Right, because I could see as you have.
Obviously, I don't want to go late at night and I don't want to go first thing in the morning,
Right,
but we're probably talking noon to 9 or
Right.
something.
Michael, what was it?
I would go 10 PM.
Ariel, did you have in your business plan, did you have hours of operation?
I just kind of did similar to what the other businesses had, and most of them do 8 to the live games at 10:30, so they close at 11. And obviously it depends on the weekdays, weekends, stuff like that. But like I said, I'm to,
yeah, I was gonna say, because I can think of starting noon to 9, because if something happens on a
Like on a
one-off.
weekend or something like that, noon, like Saturday, 8 AM, so.
Yeah,
That's what
yeah,
I'm saying,
yeah.
if it, a regular business hour, that would be my thought, but
I would also add, that we want lighting that does not impact the neighbors as a condition. And
We do have how far the neighbors are at.
I saw that, but we still want to have lighting that does not impact the neighbors. In other words, you can't have a spotlight on the side of the building facing out to the road type thing. But you can have down lighting, because you'll need down lighting in the parking lot, okay? I would also add that, we need to do everything we can to improve the vehicular circulation on the adjacent roads. And I'm not sure how we do that as a condition of this.
That would definitely be a condition as well.
But we can only require them to do it, their parcel effects, so. Yeah.
Obviously, we can have them widen the road and deed the portion of the road to the city that's out in front of them, but we can't force them to go to Perry's yard and do anything there.
It only does them good in front of their house, not mine.
I know, that's what I'm saying, is that's the problem I have. So,
I've got a white spot on mine because I made it wider.
thank you, Perry.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes,
We've gone from in a motion to discussion.
yes, we have.
So I would just suggest if there's some additional discussion, let's just say the vote fails or just,
Let's
And
remand
then-
it back and work on some conditions. That would be
Yes.
my recommendation.
and that is an option
Change.
too, that you could remand it back, refine some things and bring it back. But
Yeah.
I was just
Well,
wanted
the
to
way
make
that it was
sure.
Presented, it said that it would be under condition, so that's why I thought we could just make these stipulations and then put that, make them have to go through those
No, we
conditions.
actually have to come up with conditions.
Yes, because you are,
We
You're the
are
land use
This
authority.
is the decision here.
So-
Okay,
so
We-
again, I just
we
wanted to
make
make
the
sure that we
decision.
come back to the motion, make a decision on the motion.
then.
Okay, I'm
And
gonna
then we
withdraw
can
my
have
second,
discussion.
and I'm gonna,
I'll withdraw my motion then.
okay,
Refer it back to
I'll make a motion that we refer back to, that we remand it back and make some additional decisions and discussion on conditions before we make a motion.
Okay. I'll second that.
Motion have a second, Commissioner Himmerly. We'll start with Commissioner Warner,
Yes,
Commissioner Adams.
Now I got a question. We're gonna rediscuss this, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Before we go any further.
Correct.
So we'll have another discussion. on
So
this.
you're remanding that motion so that you can further discuss in this meeting.
Or in another meeting.
Okay,
Yeah, in another meeting, I would suggest. Because what we need to do is we need to do a little research.
We need to have more
on some
information
conditions.
on it. I mean, what's what?
In order to set those conditions.
Because I vote no on it.
We need to have some more guidance on where to set the conditions. Yeah. So we might need a work session to take care of this. So your vote.
On the remand back to staff, what's your vote?
It recommended the staff no. I mean, forward no.
So the motion was to remand it back to
Send
staff.
it back to
Bring it
staff.
back up. I think it's staff. I mean,
It goes back to staff and then comes back
I'm
here.
thinking city council.
Yeah,
No, we need to
staff.
stop here till somebody's really organized on this, because I'm not for it.
So is your vote?
No.
Yes, in favor of remanding it back to staff? Okay, Commissioner Himmerly,
Yes,
Commissioner Frisbee, yes.
Yes.
Commissioner Brinker, yes. Beecher and Commissioner Becker.
Yes.
Okay. We'll try to put a little more thought into that and come up with some better conditions.
Now that we know what we gotta do.
do you want to have further discussion in this meeting, or would you like to just continue on with the rest of the meeting?
I think at this point, we continue with this meeting, we'll bring it back hopefully here shortly, because
And maybe we sit down and work out some conditions that make sense.
And quite honestly, that may be favorable too, because this can go to the city council for that development proposal.
Correct.
And council may have some things that they would recommend as conditions.
Yep, that they can help us with,
Yes.
especially considering the neighbors.
Yep.
you know, I'd like to see maybe the staff bring to us some suggestions of things that they've seen done or they would recommend doing that we could consider as part of our
This is brand new to us.
future.
We're not knowing exactly where to go, and I don't want to make a decision that's for. Not that you're not a good guy.
It's not personal.
Okay, so we'll put a little extra thought into that, and
Okay.
I don't know if we can get that on our next meeting, or if we want to try that.
Is it on the council for next time?
It is on the council for March 3rd.
Okay,
So, but that,
but there's,
That's just-
there is just on whether they can do
that's
this.
just to remove it from the A5H holding with that development proposal.
Okay. And can that happen without our,
Yes.
okay, so we're not impeding that part of the progress by.
And that was why I had that staff recommended condition of the city council make their decision, because otherwise this would be a moot point. So,
Okay, because I don't want to impede the rest of the process by not pushing it forward or having a decision tonight, so.
Right.
Okay. Okay. Next is 5.3. This is a work session.
yes, you get to come down off of your high horses, and we're gonna get right in front of the screen here, and we're gonna talk about code. Yes.
Gotta wake us up because we're gonna get some really exciting.
I appreciate it. You know,
Anybody else need water? I'm grabbing one. Try to separate. No.
You wouldn't look at it, you do exactly what you're looking at. Yes, I did. I just had thought this idea. Well, when I seen it, and then I went for my walk, and I looked, see the stakes already set out there, and it's not that far off the road, I mean, but them cars, they're gonna be taking, about hanging out in the road. And then they try to back out of there, and I'm going, whoa, this sheriff department didn't hear that. So that, yeah, that was my biggest.
The hardest thing is, for example, we can't require them to widen the road all the way down to.
No, I understand that.
But at the same time, there's some potential impact there.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a whole funnel. I mean, I feel
Now-
right it up. These people are shoulder to shoulder right now. We're right now, hitting the road, hitting the pump, down the side of the road.
If the applicant was willing, they could potentially do those improvements, and we could create like a pioneering agreement, and then anybody else that develops is gonna have to pay that person back. So,
That's a really expensive proposition. I think it's a little unreasonable.
yes, it's pretty expensive.
People still partially on the power right now, have to set it in, bring it in for that.
And he's been working with Brad Curl, power superintendent on that, so.
We got another developer coming in.
No, this gentleman, Ario's been working with our city staff on power.
Yeah, they talked to the Mets about annex or right away through the power. That's why they were here, because they talked to me, said, hey, what about this thing? I said, let's talk about power.
That would all be taken care of in that staff technical process.
Yeah, as far as, be a hefty chunk of and the fact that it's 10 years or 15 years before that develops, and so for them to have to carry the burden of developing that road with. Would be huge. Well, I'm sitting at the onset there, oh, well, you might get something, right? Yeah.
It would be on there would be a,
Well,
there would be a deferral agreement that they would have to connect when those
once
trees
these
get
get with
close.
this, yeah. But yeah, sure, there's the same thing out there, the concepts. And then they had to put a water tank in for fire.
Yep.
The county required them to put that, so that addressed the fire issue that they have, however many thousands of gallons of water is there.
In my mind, the biggest concern here would be getting there, because it's only a fairly narrow two-lane road.
What would be the address you have to go? So you have a-
You've got to do it south on 24. Or right from my house, that's turned by the church. Yeah. Their access would be way better than the shooters, because shooters go over that side now, and it's just like the water going into the field house.
You get some air as you go.
If you, no, you just take your car out, you don't go slow enough.
All right, let's get on to this topic. I know this is what you signed up for, being the planning commission, taking away all of the subdivision stuff and all that jazz, and now we're getting into the meat and potatoes of what planning commission should be doing. Exciting.
You didn't put this all in the order. Certain sections of this code. I just want to really big smile and.
So I am going to just leave this in a draft format. So plan would be to talk about these sections of our code. I don't envision that we have significant changes to all of these sections. Some of them we may not have any, and that's fine. But we want to put out a request for proposals to revise this whole zoning ordinance. But we want your input on what you feel needs to significantly be addressed. And so if you don't have concerns, that's fine. And we have deliberately as staff not putting any of our thoughts in here because we don't want to taint your thoughts. We want it to just be raw from you. So let's go ahead and just get started. Has anyone had any concern with the title, authority, the purpose? This is pretty straightforward.
No, it just says what we do. You're right.
The only thing I would recommend in this section is if and when we do a code revision, that it's pertinent to state law and that this and all of our other sections are.
That they all match. They all match. That's important for you to say. Because everything says the same thing.
This Payson 2060, or what's the background here?
That was part of the.
First we Utah Lake out.
People were about to die if they saw that. That is a theme that I pulled from PowerPoint, and it was just for, a view. Some of the spring makers think that's what was being proposed.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
So next section. Definitions. This is a big section. The staff has found that there's several definitions that plain don't exist in here. And there's probably things that they should exist. Has anyone looked at this section and briefly found maybe a definition they didn't like, or a definition that's not there that should be?
That's not what I was looking for. When I looked at that section.
Comments on this one?
I mean, we talked about density, net and gross.
Let me pull up that code.
Yeah. See, I don't like the online version. I like the old PDF version we used to have, a nice little column so. But, I mean, it defines what net and gross is, and so I didn't have issues with definitions over there. But I think a lot of times when we look at developments, everybody's assuming that it's all off of gross acreage. So we have this property that's X amount of acres. And then you have put roads and all this other stuff in, and then they're like, oh, we want to slap 20 units to the acre, but we can't even use this 20% of the property. And so I've always said, how do we tell people, you know, and is it legal to say, hey, this is off of net acreage, buildable acreage, not off of.
That is what our code says. It doesn't, I think we have a net and a gross in there.
Yeah, I mean, define both of them.
But in our code elsewhere talks about it's based off of net. I'm thinking because of that very issue that maybe we use gross density, but maybe we have to refine gross density to be a smaller amount. Because that's often what we get from developers. Is that
Yeah, then
you know they're using gross
I
density.
got a 20-acre parcel and it's 10 acres, so I'm doing 200 units. But yet, it's not 20 acres developable,
It's 16 acres. Yeah.
and so they're wanting to be like, oh, well, we gotta get this, and so now we have to super dense. Because we're dealing with, and so I just didn't know if there was a good way to clarify that. I mean, the definition section, maybe not that, but there's just one of the thoughts that had come as I was going through the definitions. That maybe as we address other areas of the code that refer to density, that we are very clear about, you know, whether it's net buildable or, you know, or hey, if you have X amount of green space, then we are willing to give you a little more density on the actual buildable area or whatever. So, I know we run into this down in Arrowhead because they have all that wetland they can't develop on anyway, but yet they use that in their density calculations that, oh, I've got this wetland that's totally unusable, but since it's on my parcel, I should be able to build the density accordingly.
Screen share is about stopping my screen share to start my screen share. So I just basically put a statement on there. Address using modified version of gross density since that is typically what happens usually.
Yeah, just where it's very clear what happens.
And that may not be actually identified in this definition section, because like I said, we're already using the net density, but that's not what applicants submit and whatnot. So maybe we just say that it will be based on gross density, but now we're going to modify our gross density, whatever that number should be.
That's what I said.
And maybe
Here, just brought a lot of.
my thoughts on that would be maybe whoever is our consultant on this, we get some recommendations from them. How that wording would be and what that density should be to reflect what we're doing.
What about putting you?
Well, that's
Right. Minus roads required.
I mean, I thought like you said, wetlands, they're bringing that each property into their thing, I mean.
Well, there should be some counting of wetlands.
If it's usable.
That's open space, I mean, you can use it.
But like Arrowhead's like over in a 10-foot wide boardwalk and counting all as usable open space.
No.
I was really frustrated with that development for that reason.
But you could have a definition that shows, usable space, but even on wetlands and stuff like that, if 10% of it, maybe you give them 10% of it. Right. And you give them something for the value of the wetland. Is there something in here that was in, that the legislature off at the ankles?
That's what I like, I mean, you gotta give them some, but because they convert it into a park or something like
Yeah,
that.
it does count to their overall, but it shouldn't count 100%.
Like I said, the definition, I don't have any problems with the definitions, it's just, it should be applied in proper areas so the developers understand what we're.
So you can see that the definitions state that, but our applicant is using a gross density regardless of whether or not
Correct.
built.
Yes.
And so our code throughout always references the net density for any kind of residential unit counts or development improvements. It's always based on the net density. Now, coming back to say the wetlands and things like that,
That ought to probably
we
be added.
we have in our code that wetlands can be used as open space for homes. But we we also want it to be usable, so not just a place for mosquitoes and frogs. And so there's,
And flamingos.
well, if there were people, okay. But
Yes, yes, I think that was the general consensus. That left everybody happy back here.
So, yes, good point. I think that goes elsewhere, because I think these definitions are fine, but we need to figure out where we're gonna address that.
Yeah, whether there's just some comment in there that maybe in the definition section that it refers into developments based on that.
On the definitions here, I would suggest that when we hire the consultant on this, that they take their newest, dumbest intern. And have them-
Let's just call it newest, let's just say.
No, and if they
newest.
can, if they know what all the words are in the rest of the document, and then read it, they just go through and highlight the words that they don't understand. And if it's something else highlighted, it ought to be a definition.
That's a good suggestion.
Finish your thought, but then I would like to hear from the legal department. maybe a suggestion on how to define things.
How to define that person?
That is not, that's not listed there, because I think he has a great answer, but anyway.
Go ahead, Brandon.
So I just look at it like, so with the criminal code, it talks about, like when we do jury instructions, because we're trying to define certain terms. And we have a catch-all where it says, the instructor says, you shall give every word its usual and normal meaning unless we define it here for you. And so you don't want to define the term shall or number or primary, stuff that everybody knows. And so you have your catch-all that it shall have its normal and usual meaning unless specifically defined. And then that's when we go into, like, you want the mens rea. So was it intentional? Was it reckless? Was it negligence? And so we define those terms. And so we put the specific terms. So I think if you have a catch-all, like you shall give everything its usual and, and so when people say, well, what does that mean? That's usual and normal meaning, like whatever it says in the dictionary, like whatever you use every day. And then unless it's
We're
specifically
learning
defined.
that's changing every day. That's the problem.
But
We're not
then-
gonna put skibidi riz in there,
But then you address the terms of art. Because then, because when you're looking at land use or zoning or development.
There's terms that a lot of people don't understand.
Right, but they're terms of art for building and construction and
Right.
development, that you would then define, or it could be, it could be industry-wide, or maybe it's specific to our city. And so you'd want
And
to
then you
define
have
that
the
differently.
lawyer weasel words.
And then we would, yes. And
because you're not gonna you can't define every single word. And you want people to be able to understand it and use it. Don't want people getting hung up on definitions.
But I think it would be a good idea to have somebody go through that doesn't read this and just say, I don't know what this word means. Just for definitions purposes.
yeah, the newest and maybe someone that's not as familiar, because Utah code requires that our ordinances be written in a way that a lay person can understand them. And so, that's something that a consultant's gonna have to make sure that they do is, and lay person is, there's a lot of variation there too. Because we deal with that every day. We have some people that come in, they're seasoned developers or applicants, and they know it. And there's some that are very new to this and novices. So, but you do have to write them in a way that the lay person can understand.
And going back to Brandon's comment, I think that catch-all phrase could be right here. I don't
Yes.
like this interpret by the Board of Adjustment phrase. One, they meet so infrequently.
And nobody knows how to even make that happen almost.
Yes, so the catch-all phrase going in here, striking that out, for example. And then putting that catch-all phrase, and then defining a few things that are needed in the code. For example, accessory dwelling unit. I'm pretty sure that's, oh, there's accessory structure. There's
Yeah,
accessory apartment.
No, accessory dwelling unit is not there.
Oh, I thought they had.
It was accessory apartment.
So,
Accessory
and
apartment.
it may mean the same thing, and all we have to do is put accessory dwelling unit with that and
Right,
and
it's
the
not.
acronym
Right.
ADU. But I mean, there's a handful of definitions that I think we need to put in that don't exist. We have a new thing that somebody was proposing to us of a, Jill, what was that? The hotel in Vex?
A boutique hotel.
A boutique hotel. And I've never heard of that phrase in my life. The best thing I could compare it to would be like Anniversary Inn, for example, that's a very unique hotel experience. Maybe that's something we need to define, but things that we're seeing more and more as uses or things that we're seeing that maybe we want a specific clarity on.
But my point was, you don't want somebody like me going through and trying to figure out the definition. Because as an engineer, I've seen these words 10,000 times. So that's why I'm saying, it's a new person to go through and read the documents and say, I don't understand what this, I don't understand what this idea is.
Especially, yeah, we're talking about definition.
That's why I was saying that, not to be broad.
I just want to put down.
With some interns are just that, they are.
Moving on.
Would we want to still have some sort of language about interpreting a word or phrase? Is that something that?
Brandon's suggestion,
Well, yeah.
the normal, yeah, I think Brandon's suggestion is very good.
Defined as.
You always want to listen to the lawyers.
Yeah.
That's ultimately where it ends up anyway. That's right, right?
He's gonna be the one in court saying this is what it meant.
So then my next, just moving on to our definitions, short-term rental housing, we have a bedroom restriction of 3 bedrooms. I was just curious why. We know why.
Short-term rental.
If you go to the definition of short-term rental housing, it says limited to 3 bedrooms, and I thought that was an interesting thing to have.
No, it says 4 more.
Oh, sorry, 4 more.
Shall not contain more than 4 bedrooms.
But why are we limiting
I don't understand that. Somebody
If
thought
it's a
that
short-term
one time.
rental? There we go.
We got it.
There we go. Like I get 30 days, but I was like, why do we care if it's a 10-bedroom or?
Well,
I think part of,
Are we trying to avoid like?
I think it's, the more bedrooms, the more cars, the more.
Right,
the
but
more,
it's still be short term, right? So as far as the definition goes, it's either short term rental or it's not, it doesn't matter how many units it has. We're just saying, are we allowing a short term? This almost seems like it's trying to restrict a short
Oh, it
term.
definitely looks like it's trying to restrict. And
Yeah.
I think there's some logic behind that because people worry about short-term rentals of wild parties.
Right.
Whatever. Now, how founded is that? I don't know. It's probably 1 in 100. But yeah, this could be definitely something to consider changing.
Well, I'm just saying that somebody has a short term rental 5 bedrooms and it's like, but we're not classifying that as that now because this says that it's only 4 bedrooms or less.
And maybe it doesn't need to identify the number of bedrooms.
Yeah, it's just something that sticks with it for 30 days or less.
For RV&R, right?
And quite honestly, our code right now
Doesn't allow.
doesn't permit it.
Yeah, we don't have RV.
That's another thing we probably need to address.
We probably do. We need to decide whether we want them or not.
You have it.
But we need to decide whether we want to permit them.
The state is making this, it's not even the city's choice, so this is getting legislated out that.
The nice thing about what the state's doing, if this bill passes, is in the past, you couldn't regulate short-term rentals based off of finding it on a website. But this code, if it passes at the legislature right now, you could use a website. So it'd be much easier for cities to do that regulate. Other cities, for example, Sandy City, they have a whole short-term rental code and they limit so many short-term rentals based off of neighborhood areas that they've defined, and to me, it doesn't seem defensible.
Right.
But having some of the language change, and maybe Sandy City was one pushing for this at the state, I think that it makes a lot of sense that we have some language in our short-term rentals for two reasons. One, we can regulate them and know they're there, and two, we can get some sales tax.
So my understanding, we can regulate it, but I don't think we can deny it. If somebody decides to short-term rental their property, we cannot say, we can't.
Well, technically,
We can try to have.
technically we can, because it's not a permitted use in our zones.
See, I thought the state had said.
But that doesn't mean somebody's not gonna go behind their back and do it anyway.
that. So I thought the state was basically saying you would allow short-term rentals.
I think the state's perspective in the past was, they took the approach of don't regulate these, and that's why they have the provisions of, you can't use a website to determine if the property is being used this way. But the state is really, wanting to find out solutions for moderate and low income housing. I think part of that is they're seeing the short-term rentals actually impede that. And so this is a low hanging fruit thing where cities can potentially regulate and therefore may free up housing for moderate and low income. But it's a tool that they're exploring.
Destination cities, it's a huge problem for investors buy any available real estate for short-term rentals. And then there's not the housing available for people that are trying to live there or the workforce or whatever. Like Canab is terrible that way. You cannot find housing because everybody buys it up as a short-term rental. And so they've gone through some major challenges they're trying to deal with how do you, but then, yeah, how do you legally tell people you can't produce a short-term rental and how do you enforce that? Which, when I went to the conference a year ago, they actually have, the one lady that was for her entire job was building code enforcement.
I even went to the same one.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's not that point, they had, that was her full-time job, was to go do code enforcement on homes and buildings, short-term rentals. Yeah, she had a great presentation on it, and she was actually in favor of short-term rentals, just being properly regulated.
And honestly, I don't see a concern with short-term rentals. But we should have some process to regulate. Here anyway, we need to figure out how to address. Other definitions we want to go to in the code?
And Michael, just real quick, also on short-term rentals, we might have the ability to charge the transient room tax.
Oh, I think with that 100% we could.
And so from a financial standpoint of the city, we may want to regulate them because then we can collect that tax.
Yep, and then those taxes aren't going elsewhere, I'm assuming probably the Utah County since.
Because we're not regulating.
We're not regulating.
Yeah, the tax is going to somebody, but it's not us.
I have a dumb question, but it's something that I don't even know if it's in our code or not. Protecting homeowners or squatters that appear in someone's home.
Protecting homeowners?
Homeowners are not squatters. Because, I mean, I do remember one instance where someone squatted in a home that was not theirs. And the homeowner had to come in, but then there were certain rights that this squatter found that he and his wife couldn't be thrown out of that. So I remember seeing something that Representative Welton about asking about that topic.
That topic wouldn't be handled in our zoning code. I'm not quite sure where it would be handled, or if it would be more of a state.
And I'll have to go back to Doug and ask him, because it scared the crap out of me, because it was somebody that I knew that went somewhere and usually came back and somebody squatted in their house. They couldn't then throw them out. As far as definitions go, I was just curious if that's something that falls under.
Yeah, we don't have anything on that in our land use code. It's not necessarily part of our scope. It's more criminal code type of thing.
Revisit that with that. Thank you.
This is probably not definitions, but have we addressed something? Because that's another, and that's definition of something for another day is there a way to
Well,
codify that address, subletting individual rooms? It's not just ADUs,
So you're talking more almost like a boarding house or something?
and not even necessarily boarding, that might be one room, and, you know, instead of the entire home being a single border in a, yeah. I mean, it is a way to allow affordable housing, but it's also a.
We have border and boarding house. Now, something of that nature, again,
Put my Venmo code in.
But see, I mean, boarding house is talking about meals or anything provided, I'm not talking about meals provided, I'm like, you just if they need $500 a month, or $300 a month to live in this room. Not necessarily providing your food and all these other things that boarding house would include.
so that's a very interesting scenario because I don't even know why we actually have these definitions.
Well, that's what I'm saying, definitions, there's some here, that's what I'm saying, should we say something about squatting, can we take out other things, because this is a good idea to keep this as a living document, as far as what we should keep in code, that needs to be a definition, because yeah, right now.
I mean, for example, nowhere in our ordinance allows for a border. As far as I can tell, even a boarding house. We do have, bed and breakfasts, which is very similar to a boarding house, but short term, not living. So that's a very interesting thought, and I think it's one of those things, do we want to regulate it, and if so, how? Typically. So that comes down to another definition for you. If anybody can guess before I get there.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting, that was for adults, and then you might have children for a family.
In Utah? Oh, sorry.
So, I mean, technically, you could have a boarder in your home and they could be one of your family, even if they're unrelated to you, because they're an adult that's living in your house with these kitchen facilities, blah, 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 right? So, I guess the question comes down, if we think it's a concern and it's something we feel that needs to be regulated in a land use atmosphere, what would be language that we, so just think about that. And that might be something that we, again, address with the consultant, what they've been seeing elsewhere and what language would they consider.
So where in the subdivision code does it say you can't have more than one family in the home?
That's a good question.
Because why is that definition in here
Right.
for section 13?
There you go. Now,
But I think under structures or buildings is where we start to say one family, two
Yes.
family.
And then this is what a family is defined as, therefore.
correct. And then we
more
also
than this
have,
is-
we also have defined single family home, twin family home, things like that. So then, well,
A single family.
Well, yeah, you've got brother, and brother.
Maybe the word consanguinity, because, you know, that's one of those very hard.
Yeah.
We'll go back to the legal word over here. What is normally considered a family?
Yeah.
A family is normally considered a father, mother, and children. That is normally considered a family.
not by state law.
I was gonna say, that's whatever Leonard Eves is doing as far as the definition of mother and father.
They'll always talk about it in terms of people that are related and unrelated, because there's constitutional challenges with when you try to regulate related people.
That's a problem.
Yeah, that's the problem. So it's always gonna be talked about in terms of groups of people that are living that are unrelated. I'm drawing a blank on what specific amendment it is,
Oh,
right for
it's not open.
association, right for the
Go through
family.
that door by Marty, take a right. and then
But
left.
I know
Okay.
Orem and
You'll
Provo
see it,
define
and
it
that way
real
you
well.
can
'Cause
sneak
they
right back
try
in
to
there.
sort the students and the unrelated people, pretty well regulated. So I would look at those definitions when going over that.
So you see that part B there, because the family says one of the following groups, and so B is one of those groups. up to 4 adults and any minor children, if any. That tells me you could have 2 families living in there with a dozen kids each. Blair?
Yeah, just wondering if we could use the state's definition of these things and just refer our code to their definitions.
This is a similar definition, but yes, we could do that.
I'm just thinking that might simplify our code if we could reference their definitions.
Yeah, we can do that. And like I said, this is pretty similar to state law, how it reads. I think they might have another provision or 2 they throw in there, but we could do that. And or we might even be able to remove it and just say a family is defined by Utah State or Canada.
That is, changes whenever the state code changes in the states.
All right, so we've spent some time on definitions and I was expecting. Look at those definitions and email me or Jill if you have any definitions you think are ridiculous, or if you've just, I don't expect you to memorize it, I don't expect you to read it all, but just glance over it, and if you don't see something in there that you think should be, just send us an email saying, why don't you define this? That's fine, because that's really what we're looking for. We don't expect you to analyze the whole thing, but if there is something of interest to you in here as you're glancing at it, by all means, give us feedback on that, okay?
We talked about tonight, or you got notes about those?
I've got notes about those ones.
There's anything we haven't talked about.
Yes. Okay. Let's look at another section. I know we're approaching 8 o'clock, so we'll try to move along here. So this next one is near and dear to your hearts because this is what defines the planning commission in this section. Has anybody had a chance to look at this section? There's a few things. The thing that I don't like about this section is it's not inclusive because it's going to have different responsibilities and duties of, say, the planning commission, or we found in the definition section, the Board of Adjustment shall interpret, right? So it has several things elsewhere in the city's code that really should all be easily found here, probably in some sort of a matrix format that you can quickly reference, oh, a conditional use, well, that's planning commission, appeal for a conditional use goes through this body, such and such. So I think streamlining this is better, and then putting all of the powers and duties of each body exclusively in here.
Yeah, and a table with the, for example, what we did tonight with we were the land use authority. We didn't understand that.
I think it's, and conditional use is a very difficult situation to address because, like I was mentioning earlier, the conditions have to be related to the concern that you have. And so what we propose to reduce that. Well, we want to reduce the impact on the neighbors. So maybe we shield the lighting and maybe we have hours of operation.
But, you know, like on that one, our biggest concern was how do we improve the traffic? And honestly, the only way to improve the traffic flow is one new road all the way to 147.
And in all honesty, I just had a conversation with someone that's quite interested in Teresa Heights property surrounding. And if
that's why I asked the question about
if
what
they
your neighbors
purchase this, yes, if they purchase this, they want to put probably several hundred houses. And it would be aligning with that adopted plan, but it's a huge change for this area. But again, it's that double-edged sword. The city's always having to balance private property rights of all parties.
Right.
And so we can't prohibit the development by one property owner at the expense of another, but at the same time, we can't eliminate property rights entirely.
There's always growing things, because if there's not the traffic on the road's never gonna develop.
Generally, there.
So it's like, if we put that out there and then people start developing on way, then the road will develop and widen and be better, but it's not gonna do it unless there's pressure and demand on the road in the first place. And so it becomes nobody's gonna pay to develop the road unless, and now there's a field house out there that maybe people probably want to develop in that area, and then the road does get widened because the development comes out that way. But obviously the individual property owners now aren't trying to, can't ask them to do that type of thing, so. Again, the consultant might have an idea of the way to put that out there, but
This section's not bad, but I do like the idea.
yeah.
At least the most common responsibilities of each group.
And
a lot more commission.
It's okay to potentially have some of that language elsewhere, but that should always reference back to this section so that we have a clear defined powers and duties of each entity, right? Okay, any other thoughts on this one? Should we move on?
So wait, maybe before you go, so looking under administration and procedures, I know you talked a little bit about planning commission. Do you talk about board of adjustment at all?
No, and that's a good one to bring up. Board of adjustments are kind of an antiquated thing, but not. So very, very large communities oftentimes have some sort of appeal board or board of adjustment.
And it's very formal.
And it's very formal.
Very formal.
But many cities, especially small to medium size, and I would say we're medium small. We're probably a medium small city. I mean, on the scope of things, New York City is what, 8 million people, or 25,000. Not even considered a city in the state of New York, right? But anyways, so a board of adjustment is a difficult mechanism for appeals and variances, but that's what we use currently. Maybe we consider some alternatives because state law has now changed from board of adjustment and states what's called an appeal authority. And an appeal authority can hear any number of appeals on different items. An appeal authority can also be the land use authority for because that's an actual land use decision, not an appeal. So we can consider that as multiple bodies, one body, whatever. For example, one suggestion that I made to Jill was perhaps the planning commission could be made the land use authority for variances. And perhaps for appeals where somebody's actually wanting to say, I don't like the decision that you made, either the planning commission or city council or staff, then the appeal authority could be, say, like a law judge, or maybe it could be a city attorney from another city, because Brandon's going to be the one that will be defending us, right? If we go to court. So we want him to be able to do that opposed to hire a consultant attorney. But anyways, so those are some things to consider, but I don't know if you guys have any thoughts. We do, and we actually had a board variance request. No, 2 weeks ago, when our last planning commission meeting would have been, we had a board adjustment meeting for 2 months. But we do have another variance request by someone else. Honestly, I've been here almost 3 years, and we've had 2 board of adjustment meetings. So it's not very often, but we've had a few. So anyways, I'll just put that on there, consider appeal authorities versus board of adjustment perhaps.
We're gonna make it all the way through all.
Oh, absolutely. General provisions. This one, I don't specifically have any concerns on, but I don't know if anybody's looked at this. Should we pull this one up?
Probably totally minor, but do people realize that if they install curb and gutter, the city pays for the asphalt higher? 13.08, it's like, not that people would go jump out, but curb and gutter and sidewalk, but the fact that if they do.
That's what I did to get curb gutter.
What do you say, which section was
It's
that?
13.08.040. I was like, I don't know if that incentivizes somebody putting it or not, but yeah, I can put my curb gutter sidewalk, and then the city will bring the asphalt all the way to my house instead of.
Honestly, I think that was kind of meeting the owners halfway.
Yeah.
Most of the time, applicants come in and they're like, you have to do what? So.
Yeah.
it incentivizes to-
Well, it's only on an existing well, yeah, just construction, stuff like that.
But yeah, this is something that is a very good tool for us, but yes, people often get concerned. They want to build a shop in their backyard and the city says, oh, well, this just triggers that you have to put the curb gutter and sidewalk in front of your home. That's $20,000 improvement. Maybe that's a good thing, maybe it's not, but it's really one of the only tools, mechanisms the city uses to try to bring curb gutter and sidewalk to areas that it doesn't. Other than if the city has identified in their public improvements master plans to put some of this infrastructure in. So. Any other thoughts on the general provisions? Let's go back to. Okay. So the next one is 13.10 is off-street parking. This one, I think it's like definitions where we might want to see some feedback from you on this. But the provision that we are talking about tonight with the applicant is right here. So we have this section that talks about how many stalls based off of the type of use. However, this type of use is not identified in here. It is identified elsewhere in our code, so we know it's a use per se. But
it's not on this.
it's not on this, and so
So the closest one you've got is either the music center or the recreation center, which is 1 for 200. So it's all for 200.
yeah, so one stall for 200 square feet. So in his case, that would be 5 stalls per 1,000, right? It's a little high. Now, maybe that's okay, but so on his development, it would be like 350. Then people would be complaining about this sea of asphalt out there.
How big was he? 45,000.
Yeah, it's like 45,000.
300 by 150. Yeah, it's 350 by 100. It's 300 by 150.
So staff felt as if this was an appropriate measure here at the bottom.
That's only
Addresses that.
That's only 45 stalls.
No, it's 45,000 square feet.
Yes.
300 by
45,000 square feet, and that's 5 stalls per 1,000.
Yeah, I was like, I was figuring 135.
225 stalls.
Yeah, I was figuring about 135, you get 3 per 1,000.
So
And the 225 is probably existing.
Probably.
And that's why when we saw this section of our code, we're like, well, this is an opportunity, if he wants to spend the money to do this parking study, it could potentially save him some money in the number of required stalls.
Right, because right now, the only thing we have is the one at the park, which will.
Okay, so I don't want to go over this significantly because like I said, we could spend another hour on this. But look at this and give us feedback if there's, for example, in here, if there's uses that are not identified, that you think should be specifically identified. Or if you think something's too excessive or too not enough, just give us some feedback on that. Most of the rest of this code section isn't a significant concern, I don't think, but feel free to glance over that.
Michael, I think, the only other one that might be helpful to get input, whether it's tonight or a future meeting, is parking in downtown.
Yes, yes, thank you for, so we have a couple developments wanting to come into the community right on around Main Street. And we know parking is severely limited on Main Street. And we have to figure out how to address that. Now, our code allows for city council to have some flexibility there, with parking reductions, and allow for city parking for the uses, things like that. But we're never actually going to get an ideal number of parking stalls for our historic Main Street blocks. I would say
Unless we
probably
build a parking structure.
correct. And then that's multi-million dollars to do that. And is it really worthwhile? And so I don't know how to do the parking to regulate that other than if we had times of use type of parking, maybe, for example, we have from 8 to 5 p.m. we have this many stalls, and so this many can be allotted to businesses, blah, blah, blah. And then we have from 5 to 10 p.m. this many stalls, and from 10 p.m. to 8 a.m., something like that. But even then, it's a guessing game. So any thoughts on how to potentially address parking in?
So you're talking, because you got more development coming in downtown areas, you have more tenants or something like that.
So for example, the furniture store, what was the name of it, Jill?
The Getaway.
Yeah.
The Getaway. An applicant has proposed a wedding reception type use there.
And that's
Which we think is a great idea. But a wedding reception is going to
be
is gonna
200
about,
stalls.
I think for the size of it, I think you need like 26 or something. Well, he has none, because most of those have none in that area there. Because it's all city parking behind it, and there might be a handful of properties that have a few stalls. But we don't feel as if that's an unreasonable use for that area. And honestly, most of the time, that's going to be from 5 to 11 o'clock at night time, right? When most of the businesses there are probably not open. So it's an interesting concept.
We have some shuttle service, they park over here, we'll get you on the shuttle, take you downtown.
And Jill and I have had this conversation a handful of times, and we both agree that having limited parking downtown is a good thing, because we want those stalls used, and we want it to be vibrant, and we want people using our downtown. And if it's a sea of parking lot, then there isn't businesses, it's parking, right? Parking doesn't pay the bills.
It's like that went out Port City Center Street. I mean, back in the day, they used to have 4 or 2 lanes across the middle. They went down to.
In the street.
Now, I went down there, it's packed, and I hadn't seen it that packed in years, and you got more foot traffic, which is probably what Payson City is more after. And I mean, growing up in Provo, I mean, like I said, I seen it was 2 in the middle and 2 on each side. And if it's still packed there, we lost a lot of business, but then now it's taken a while. Now the different businesses coming in there to drop people in, and I was really surprised the other night.
So this is a very interesting scenario. Who here has ever shopped at Walmart? And when you shop at Walmart, there's 2 schools of thought here, right? You're gonna park far away because you don't want anybody to bang up your car, or you're gonna park as close as you can because you've got a whole boatload of groceries and whatnot, right? Regardless of where you park at Walmart, you're gonna go get a gallon of milk, right? Well, you're walking a half a block from your parking stall to that back of the store where that gallon of milk is. But people will complain if they have to walk a half a block on Main Street to go to a restaurant. So it's a very interesting concept there, but something to think about.
I think at one of the meetings, they talked about that lot across from the park, turning that into parking, that's behind those trees and the grass, and making that a parking lot at one point, was some discussion, but.
I mean, our code doesn't necessarily allow for on-street parking, but I think our on-street parking is utilized quite often. But
I'm glad that they changed the stipulation on parking on the street
for the winter time,
when it's not snowing. Because that so many people talk about that on Facebook. And I got sick of it, and I just sit there and I'm like, but I mean, when it's not snowing, it should be able to park of course.
I don't know that there's good solutions that we can actually put into our code to address historic downtown. But if you've got any feedback on that.
This is just back to parking in general, especially in apartments, multifamily, code is 2.25 per unit. In today's day and age, when you have a 2 or 3 bedroom that's occupied by 2 or 3 couples, that is not even anywhere near enough. I mean, I had employees that you got 4 people, but you have 4 cars in a 2-bedroom. And so it's like, it becomes a parking nightmare for, and yes, you try to say, oh, we'll make the HOA or the apartment complex monitor that, but I think even down here at Ever State, whenever we see it, like cars up and down the street outside of the complex all the time. So it's just something I think, so I don't know the communities are doing, but we need to find a way to address that.
And on that same note, we've been guilty of it before, but not we just can't not. We can't waive that.
There's gotta
They
be,
just park lots.
they've either gotta have, enough side yard or backyard to be able to park their own, or the development of each provide yard. Doesn't matter if you're out west.
It's after 8 o'clock, so now you're brain shit.
That's right, it's on overdrive now. And our very last section I did tonight was. What we had to do, but we have the off-street parking. So the last one was a transportation master plan. And I don't perceive much need to be talked about with this body, because that's more or less going to be done. I would say on that one, glance over the transportation master plan section. And I say glance because, you know, it's good bathroom reading, so.
It's not.
The code is, it's not the funniest to read, I get it. But give us any feedback that you have on that.
Do we get, so my one question going through there, we have, it's timing the trail system stuff. Do we get a lot of feedback, people not wanting to apply trail master plan, or are we typically getting people that are like, hey, we see this is what you got planned out, not an issue? I mean, what's kind of the,
Yes.
you know, it's like, we obviously got to tie this all together, but is there a lot of people coming and say, no, I just don't want.
Not usually with trails, because wetlands are a great place to put a trail on, and then you can call that a usable open space, right? But there's some trails that don't make sense to the city, and so it makes more sense to be part of an HOA or some sort of private entity that's controlling that for their development. But our trails master plan identifies where we want to have the regional trail system, and for sure we want to make sure that we secure those corridors approximately where they're identified. Did you have any more to add to that, Joe?
No, other than, I think where the transportation master plan is part of the general plan. I think we just have one section on general plan that covers every chapter. And there had to have been some history of why we called out transportation master plans separately. Because we don't have a chapter on the utility master plan
Yeah.
or,
Or.
yeah. And so, yeah, like I said, there's gotta be some history, but I think, yeah, look at the content, but I think we'll put it in where it talks about the general plan.
A lot of this, you can see road and street standards, relationships, development approval, relationship. with master plan. These are all things done typically by public works and engineer. Glance over that, anything that has a potential interest to you. So that's all we've got tonight. My thoughts are for next time, it's the big one. We would have the zoning title. And so we're trying to look at our zone districts, and if we can, we would move on to also the relationship to the subdivision ordinance. There's a section that kind of gives further details on commercial and industrial development and our supplementary. So our plan is to at least share this with you before we put out the request for proposals. And so that way we at least get some feedback from you before that, so that we can put some of your feedback into that request. There's several zones that have noble intent that have never been realized.
That's what I'm thinking. Something that have no actual areas.
Yes. And we have one zone that we've done away with that someone has brought to our attention. They wanted to put accessory apartments in commercial zones. And that was a code amendment they wanted to do just in general to all commercial zones. And staff said that we wouldn't support that. But Jill mentioned about, we used to have an accessory apartment overlay zone, and maybe a hybridized version of that used to be code could be helpful for allowing accessory apartments where it makes sense in commercial zones. The nice thing about an overlay zone for something like that is it would be a legislative, I guess the legislative body being the ones that approve an overlay would have authority to regulate that. And we would just put criteria similar to our other overlay zones of what we want. So that might be something to think about as far as, so I bring it up because that brought it to us and potentially address it.
So which sections are we gonna hit next time? So
I would say 13, 14 is the biggest one, because that might take a whole time. But take a gander at those other ones. I don't think relationship to the subdivision ordinance is a significant section. It's really just saying this will adhere to that, that will adhere to this, vice versa. But 13, 14, 13, 18, and 13, 20 have significant language in them. I just don't know what we'll get to.
And just one question, do we know, we're getting close to March, whose seats are up this time around?
Blair's.
Just Blair's, just the same
Yeah.
one.
Blair, any comments?
who's got his hand up?
No, my computer just doing things for me.
AI is finest right there.
All right. Well, thanks everyone. And like I said, this is the meat and potatoes of planning commission. This is where you have the most impact on our city. What language we put in this book. This is what we use every day. Developments happen, of course. Thank you.
Do we have to adjourn? Yeah.
Motion adjourned.
Second. Pretty much like a birthday party.
It's my birthday.
This is your birthday, your birthday party.
So we sing happy birthday to you.
All in favor, by yes. Yes. Yeah, that's how she wanted to spend her birthday.
Dedication.
That's right. Highest paid employee you got.